In 1947, Hawaii was a small island state of America. This was at a time when Hawaii wasn't very developed yet. It was a very simple place where people lived ordinary lives, and it was here in a middle-class home that a child was born named Robert Toru Kiyosaki. His father, Ralph Kiyosaki, who is known throughout this book as Poor Dad, was a highly educated and respected government officer. He had a PhD from the University of Hawaii and now held a senior position in the education department there. His salary was stable and his job was secure. But there was one thing he still didn't have: financial freedom. And this absence loomed over Robert's entire childhood like a shadow. Robert noticed that his father earned money, but all of his salary would run out by the end of the month. In fact, during the last 3 or 4 days, his father would be tense, just hoping the next paycheck would come soon. Watching this, a question kept circling in young Robert Kiyosaki's mind. Why does Dad only ever get this much money? Why doesn't more money come in so he wouldn't have to worry? Robert found the answer to this question, but in a place he never expected. He had a friend named Mike, a pretty normal, calm-natured kid. But Mike's father was a businessman who was slowly growing his work in Hawaii. One day, while the two were talking, Robert had an idea. He said to Mike, "Why don't we work and earn some money too? Other kids have toys, comics. We don't have anything. We'll earn money and buy whatever we want." Mike liked the idea too. They tried a few experiments, but nothing worked out. They tried other things too. Those didn't work either. Finally, Mike said to Robert, "Look, we probably can't do this alone. We need someone else to help us. Let's go to my dad. He knows how to make money." Robert felt a bit odd about this because Mike's dad wasn't all that educated. He thought, what would he know about making money? But Robert had no other option, so they went. The two of them explained their whole situation to Mike's dad. After hearing them out, he thought for a moment and then gave them a job. He said, "Look, you need to stock the shelves in this shop, lay out tiles, and in return I'll pay you both 10 cents an hour." Robert thought this was way too little. He was even angry that he'd have to do such boring work. But again, he had no other choice, so he agreed. This went on for a few weeks. The two of them kept doing their work. Then one day, Mike's dad called them in and asked a question. "Tell me, kids, what have you learned so far?" Robert answered him straight. "Nothing, Uncle. All we've been doing is this boring work, and are getting paid so little for it that it doesn't even matter." Rich Dad smiled a little and then said something that became the biggest lesson of Robert's life. "Robert, this frustration you're feeling right now, most people feel this their entire lives. They always work for others and always wait for something someone else will give them. And that thing comes so rarely that it never brings any real change to their lives. Do you want this to happen to you too? Or do you want to get out of this cycle?" Robert said immediately, "Yes, Uncle, I want to get out." "But how?" Rich Dad explained. "Look, Robert, there are 3 kinds of people in this world. First, there are poor people who just survive. Second, there are middle-class people who earn, spend, and stay stuck in the same cycle forever. And third, there are rich people who make their money work for them. They don't do everything themselves." Robert was confused. "I don't quite understand, Uncle." "Look, an employee wakes up in the morning, goes to the office, works 8 or 9 hours a day for the whole month. Then when his salary comes, a pile of bills shows up right along with it. Expenses eat it up, and all of this means his money doesn't even last a month. And then he's anxious again until the next paycheck comes." Hearing this, Robert immediately thought of his own father, because his dad's life was running exactly the same way. Mike's dad continued, "If you ever see someone living this kind of life, understand that this person is trapped in a rat race." Robert was startled. "Rat race? What's that, Uncle?" "Robert, have you ever seen a rat running on a treadmill? Do you know why it runs?" "Because it thinks it's moving forward, Uncle," Robert answered. "Exactly, but the rat never realizes it's running in the same spot the whole time. Most people do the same thing. A little more salary, a little more spending, and the same cycle repeats. But rich people are outside this cycle because they make their money work for them. Just like I gave you both 10 cents and made 20 cents in profit from your work. Rich people do the same thing. They get others to work for them." This was Robert's first lesson, and it was so powerful that he applied it throughout his entire life. Robert grew increasingly interested in finance. After some time, he went back to see Rich Dad and said, "Uncle, please, I need more financial knowledge. I want to learn more about making money. Will you teach me? Please." Rich Dad said, "All right, but today we won't talk about money. We'll talk about assets and liabilities." Assets and liabilities? What's that? He picked up a piece of paper and a pencil and drew a simple diagram. Then, showing it to Robert, he asked, "Robert, tell me, what's something in your house that's an asset? Something you bought that's now giving you benefit?" Robert answered right away, "Yes, we have a car. It's very useful to us." "I see. How often is it useful? Once a month? Maybe twice?" "Yes, that's right. And the rest of the time, it just sits in the garage." "Okay, now tell me, does your car put money into your pocket or take money out of it?" Robert thought about it and realized, actually, money goes out for it. Petrol, servicing, maintenance, it all comes out of our pocket. So Robert admitted that money was leaving his pocket because of it. Mike's dad said, "Then Robert, where's the asset in that?" "That's a liability. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket without requiring much involvement from you. If you bought that car and it just sits there, you're not using it much, and instead you're bearing its maintenance costs yourself. Don't think of it as an asset. It would only become an asset if, during all the time it sits idle, you rented it out to someone else, because then you'd get regular income from that car without any extra effort on your part." And then he said the line that's the most famous line in the entire book: "Rich people buy assets. Poor people can't afford to buy anything. And middle-class people buy liabilities and think they're assets." Robert felt as if he had woken up from some kind of illusion, because until then, everything he'd ever bought had seemed like an asset to him. But that day, he finally got clarity on this. A few years later, when Robert had grown up and was nearly finished with college, he joined the U.S. Marine Corps. During this time, he also went to the Vietnam War as a pilot. Then came 1973, when Robert faced a new problem. His father started pushing him to continue his studies and at least earn a PhD so he could get a good government job and live a stable life. But Robert disagreed because he wanted to follow the path his rich dad had shown him. So he told his father directly, "I'm only going to do business." And with this resolve, he left home. But he had no idea how many struggles lay ahead. As his first business, he started a small company that made wallets out of nylon. He thought this business would take off, but it didn't, and all the money he'd invested sank. This hit him so hard that he fell into depression. He even stopped eating and drinking properly. When he couldn't bear his situation any longer, he finally decided to go tell Rich Dad everything. He went to Rich Dad, who by now had become a very big businessman, and told him everything about his business in detail. After hearing it all, Rich Dad asked just one question: "Robert, what did you learn from all this?" Robert thought for a moment and then said, "Yes, actually I learned a lot. I learned how the market works, how important it is to understand customer needs, and how to track cash flow every single day. I understand all of this now." Rich Dad advised him to try something else again and apply everything he'd just learned. This gave Robert some confidence. He tried another venture, but that didn't work out well either. He tried something else that didn't work either. Frustrated, he went back to Rich Dad again. There, he realized that Rich Dad had become even wealthier than before. He went to his office and explained everything again. He said, "I don't understand where I keep going wrong. I choose my businesses very carefully. I put in full effort, but I just can't figure out why none of my businesses are working." Hearing this, Rich Dad asked him a question. "Tell me something. When you were in school, you had 7 different subjects and you wanted to top all of them. But did you actually top every single subject?" Robert said, "Not every subject, Uncle, but I used to score really well in math and science." "Why did you score well in those? What was the reason?" "Because those are my favorite subjects. I spent more time learning them." Exactly. That's your answer right there. You haven't succeeded in business so far because you keep choosing businesses in which you have zero expertise. You just see someone else doing well and think you'll do well too. But that's not how it works, Robert. Not everyone is good at everything. And if someone is good at something, it's because they first spent a lot of time on it. They learned it. Only then did they truly understand it. So before doing anything, gather thorough knowledge about it first. Understand every good and bad aspect of it. Read books about it. Get advice from people who have experience in it. Attend seminars related to it. And once you have enough knowledge about it, the question of failing at it won't even arise. Robert did exactly as he was told. This time, he tried his hand at real estate, since he had more knowledge about it compared to other businesses. Still, he kept learning more. He read books on real estate, consulted some experts, and after all this, he started with a small property, which he sold within just a few days for almost a 40% profit. He gradually built up this business and kept growing it. By now, Robert's financial condition had improved a lot because he had rented out some properties, which were generating passive income for him. But even now, all his problems weren't solved because while he was earning good money in this business, a large chunk of his earnings had to go to the government in the form of taxes. After struggling with this for quite a while, he went to Rich Dad again. By now, Rich Dad had become one of the richest people in Hawaii. He advised Robert, "Look, the government created taxes, but it never publicly explained how to reduce them, and the government won't teach you this either. You have to learn it yourself. When an employed person's salary comes in, the government deducts its tax first, and then whatever's left over goes to them. But when a real businessman's money comes in, he first covers his business expenses, then pays tax on whatever's left, and only after that does he spend on his personal expenses. Looking at both, only the sequence is different. Tax first, then expenses, or expenses first, then tax. But over the years, the impact of this sequence amounts to crores of rupees. Robert, you're not doing a job, you're running a business. And a person running a business can legally show many things as business expenses and save a lot on tax that way. But uncle, isn't that cheating the government? Don't think of it as cheating, Robert. This is financial literacy. Only rich people know these methods. That's exactly why there's such a huge gap between the rich and the middle class. Robert accepted this too and studied taxes in much greater depth and later structured all his businesses and investments accordingly. Then time moved on, and Robert's life took a different turn. In 1994, when he turned 47, he made one of the biggest decisions of his life. He decided to retire. This was very rare, because back then people typically retired between the ages of 60 and 70. But he made this decision along with his wife, Kim. They decided he no longer needed to work. His real estate properties were generating passive income, his businesses were running well, and even his investments were giving him good returns. In short, money was coming in even without him actively doing anything. In fact, his biological father, who by now was quite old, was still working a government job, while Robert had retired before him. And all of this happened because of Rich Dad's teachings. About 3 years after retiring, in 1997, Robert decided to write a book about this entire journey. When he discussed the idea with his wife, she liked it and helped him a great deal with it. The book was ready within about 8 months. But when the two of them took it to get published, no publisher agreed to publish it because in their eyes, Robert wasn't a famous person. So, with the help of a friend, they ended up self-publishing it. The book gradually became so popular that, to date, over 32 million copies have been sold, and it has been translated into more than 40 languages.